Yes, welcome back to our segment here at COMETSA Radio Worldwide, wherein we are talking to our industry guests. I am with my co-hosts, Brother George Mutenda-Zamera and Sister Boniwe Dunster. And we are talking to the MTN Group Chief Human Resources Officer, Mr. Paul Norman. What a pleasure to have you here, my brother. How are you doing?
Thanks, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I'm doing well, thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. We are honored to have you here at COMETSA Radio Worldwide. You have shared with the public some amazing work that you are doing at the MTN Group. And it's for that reason that we wanted you to come and inspire us and many others, not only the HR professionals, but the executives out there. And I've asked my colleagues to really stage a conversation for us to really get to the bottom of it. And by so doing, we hope that we will also be inspiring you and your team. We are proud of the MTN brand. It's an African brand that has gone out in the globe. And I always say that the great brands are to be multiplied, not to be minimized. And this is just that process. Thank you very much. And I hand over to my colleagues to start the conversation with you.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, welcome, Paul. And Boniwe will kick off with questions for you.
Thanks, George.
Cool. So thank you once more, Paul, for availing yourself for this interview. We're actually looking forward to engaging with you and getting to educate our colleagues in the human capital or in the human resources fraternity and in other organizations where you've actually been leading us in terms of employee value proposition and what has been done in your space. And we're hoping that this will actually open new opportunities and for people to actually learn from what MTN has been doing. So as a starting point, Paul, can you just give us a brief description or introduction around MTN Group and its companies?
Okay. Well, Boniwe, maybe I should just start by saying yellow, because of course that's the universal greeting in MTN. So, I think to many of us, this is not just a word or a greeting, but as a telecommunications company, this simple word is so symbolic of how we as MTNers connect with each other across the world. So it's very much part of our culture. And whenever we have gatherings and talk to people, you know, that's how we start. So I think it's appropriate to do that here.
Sure.
MTN was founded in 1994. And as we know, that was the dawn of the South African democracy. And I think as a result, we have that spirit and inspiration of the new dawn that sort of has been inculcated in our DNA right from that beginning part. You know, we are a mobile telecommunications operator, and we offer various services in voice, data, enterprise, digital, mobile banking solutions. And this we offer to our customers and businesses across our footprint, which is in Africa and the Middle East. So we operate in about 23 countries across this footprint, and that makes us one of the largest and most diverse homegrown African companies. We have over 270 million customers with about 45 million mobile banking customers. And this also makes us one of the largest banks on the continent, and about over 100 million data users. We also have there's around 20,000 employees that, you know, make up MTN across the 23 countries. And they comprise of about 58 nationalities. And nearly 40% of our workforce is women, and around 50% are millennials or younger people, you know. So I'd just stop there, but that sort of gives you a bit of a sense of who we are.
Okay, great stuff. And it's actually quite interesting that you mentioned that 40% is women, because we're actually celebrating the International Women's Month now in March.
Yeah.
So moving right along, if you can just tell us and just explain to us what led to the MTN Group new value proposition. what got you to this point and to in actually achieving such great value proposition that many organizations aspire for?
Mm. Yeah, so I think here probably the place to start for me would be that our new EVP really comes from a belief system that we have that every MTN deserves an inspired life. And I think a forward-looking people strategy, should aim to recognize, commit and act on everyday inspirations from a work, connections, positivity, and a purpose perspective. So the very first feature of our EVP is realizing that inspiration is a collection of powerful forces that make us extraordinary. So that said, I think our own EVP finds its own inspiration from many factors, as is the case when you think about making exponential shifts. As I said earlier, when I introduced MTN, I said, inspiration is in our DNA of this company, and our 25-year journey is not one that is rooted only in technology advancements, but it's also in the legacy of many MTNers who were inspired by the change that this company could make in the lives of nations across two continents. So in the mid-90s, when MTN started, I think there were less than 2 out of 100 people in Africa that had access to a phone, and less than 20% of the entire population had a bank account. And 25 years later, as I introduced our company, I said we alone touch 270 million customers and 45 million mobile money subscribers. So that gives you a sense of that sort of extraordinary. I think the second big driver was really the harsh realities of this global pandemic that we're still dealing with. Since its onset last year, life has changed for all of us. I mean, even the fact that we're doing this interview in this way. And what we discovered is that each of our lives is connected in so many ways. Never before have we been so far apart. Yet we saw each of our people finding comfort, hope, and most of all, inspiration in the simplest of things to achieve extraordinary feats during these extraordinary times. And then I think finally, our third driver was our ambition for the future. We've launched a new strategy, and in 2021, it really marks a very important chapter for us because we sort of embarking on some of this exciting new transformative opportunities. And we believe firmly that, talent, culture, and skills is a vital enabler that will catapult our people and the business into the future. So our EVP, in essence, and its tenets, does exactly this. It's living inspired, which positions us for a future that is designed for our people, powered by our people, and committed to our people.
Sure. Thanks. Actually, that also then leads me into my next question, because I actually wanted you to also go in deeper detail around the 4 pillars. So I've noticed that it comprises of the 4 pillars. If you can just briefly highlight what each pillar means for MTN, and probably what it also means for you as the person that's steering the human resources ship for MTN.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess let me just think how best to say this. I think our new value proposition, as I said, is about what inspires our people to shine in their strengths and achieve the extraordinary together. And as you said, our EVP is underpinned by 4 pillars. And really, we're aiming to create a holistic inspiration, which is really powered by choice. Because I think one of the key things that we're learning even through this pandemic is this issue of personalization. And so the 4 pillars are, the first one is work with meaning. And what we mean by that is that work is not just a job. It's a career, an aspiration, and inspires impact. So we will focus on changing the way we see work and create more empowerment, unleash the potential of our people through agility, and make it possible for each person to bring their best every day. The second pillar is what we call connect to develop. Here we're talking about being connected is the essence of human progress and development. That's what we believe, you know. And so connections here we want to make sure are driven by common goals and outcomes where we share effort and success, and it's anchored in management and authentic leadership. The third one is thrive in positivity. And our focus will be to create an inspiring environment for everyone to activate their entire or their whole selves, and powered by a genuine sense of inclusion, a balanced work life, respect for diversity, where there's fair rewards, true recognition, and personal flexibility to contribute most productively. And then the final one is really grow with purpose. And I think here the real growth is inspired by a purpose that advances individuals, organizations, communities together. We all know that today, you know, and I think it's another thing that's come up through the pandemic, is that a purpose-driven organization is so important today. And so we aim to enable opportunities for individuals to explore innovative aspirations, acquire future skills, and meaningfully impact communities. So while our EVP is defined by these 4 pillars, I think the real heart of it is in 2 important characteristics, which changes the dynamics of how it comes to life. The first one is that EVP is about, as I said, the power of choice. And MTNs may all be what we call yellow-blooded, but they are unique and they're distinct. So all 20,000 of them we have to see them as very unique beings. So naturally what inspires them is unique and a choice. So our EVP is about that power of choice to make life inspiring in a way that defines each person at their best. And then the second part is that while living an inspired life is about the choices our MTNs would make, it is equally about the promises we as an organization and as leaders have to keep. So to this end, each of the leaders across our markets have made a promise to make sure that they bring these inspirational choices to life in thought, word, and in action.
Thank you. And I think that actually summarizes it quite well. And I'm hoping that our listeners are also inspired by your story and by the journey that MTN has been on. So again, I think on my side, just share with our listeners in terms of the experience and the contributions that your employees and the line managers and the senior leadership actually played and contributed towards the development of this EVP, because one can actually only imagine that it was a collective effort with everybody whose blood is yellow, if I may say.
Yeah, so I guess they've played quite a big role, I think, in you know how they've brought this to life. Our philosophy, as I said, is this live inspired, which is a reflection of what inspires our MTNers every day, as I said, to achieve, you know, what they are passionate about. So I think our EVP really started to really unfold over the last year, where we saw our lives change at, I would call it, breakneck speeds and proportions. Organized world quickly pivoted to a virtual and remote work life, which changed how we engaged, connected, worked, and lived. And I think there's some amazing stories about how our MTN has kept not only the essential nature of our business running every day, but committed themselves to innovation, care, humanity above all. It is also with all of this that I think we believe that our EVP to live inspired is a promise that we still strive to keep for our people. and choice they embrace to make it their own, you know. So I think the most striking example of this from our EVP launch, which was, as you referenced earlier, and just from a few weeks ago, was where we had over 300 MTNs representing various professional backgrounds and countries. You know, it was from HR, technology, finance, marketing, supply chain, all across the business, and the business leaders from all our markets that came together to create a really, I would say, historic state-of-the-art launch event where all 20,000 MTNs could come together. And the event, I think, also showed that, you know, this connection where over 11,000 MTNs joined in 1 hour and listened and celebrated and embraced this power of living inspired. And what started from that point, you know, was a revolution in itself. And our leaders and managers across these countries have actively embraced the promise to bring an inspiring value, while our MTNs have opened their hearts to make, you know, their voices and choices known. And I think in the end, what we know for sure is that inspiration makes history. It enlightens us. It makes us extraordinary in ways we never imagined. And most of all, I think it makes us all happier. And this is exactly what, you know, we at MTN aspire for each of us to live inspired. And I think that's where you see this thing coming through, you know, where we've done a lot for our people in this process.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And it is actually quite an inspiring story. I'm gonna move over to my co-host, George. Over to you.
Yes, very inspiring, Paul, I must say. And I think I can understand why in October last year, MTN was named Africa's most valuable and admired brand at a value of 3.3 billion US. I can understand that now from what you're saying. There's a lot going on behind it.
Yes.
Tell us, because COVID has been probably the biggest, has had the biggest impact on businesses as an event. What would you say are the 2 or 3 key initiatives, whether internal or external, that MTN did as a result of the impact of COVID?
I think, you know, there's probably a couple of things. I think we were quick to respond, you know, to this. We initially, and this is more internal, of course, we formulated a global and local crisis committee, which was cross-functional in all our markets, and then one at the group. I think another thing was, of course, understanding and trying to protect the health and well-being of our people and our customers and the community squads was quite key. So we ensured that people, health and safety, business service resilience, and customer experience and community support were the top 3 priorities, you know. So we had this mantra where we said, you know, protect our people, our customers, our communities, and our network for the services. Those were the things that we very quickly got out. We also formulated, this was from an HR perspective, what we called a COVID-19 people experience strategy, which guided all the actions based on, you know, we took in the psychosomatic life cycle and the effects that would have on the crisis and on the people, and we built that in. And that was comprised of, you know, physical health and safety protocols. There was a pandemic incident guidance sort of focus, employment security measures. So we came out very early to say we want to protect the jobs of our people, and we wanted retention with no loss of employment. We also recognized that the people were going to be under financial strain, not so much from our perspective because we didn't reduce salaries or get rid of people or anything, but them in their society, in their families, because other family members were obviously being impacted by COVID in terms of job losses and things like that. And so we formed a global staff fund, which was really a fund that the employees created, and we started it at the executive senior levels, where we all contributed, and we basically raised a fairly large amount of money that we made available to our staff that they could use for crisis issues in their homes, in their communities. And then also there was emotional and mental well-being support, because of course we know that through this process, a lot of people suffered. There was a lot of emotional impact. Suicides went up and things like that. So we were very focused in that space. We ran lots of virtual engagements and communication strategies, amongst other things. There was also business service resilience. So, it was imperative for us that we operate as an essential service. So from customer and community service access to network resilience, we had uninterrupted supply chain efficiencies for the core operations. And then I think finally the customer experience and community support was top of mind. We were providing virtual experiences, commitment, for a continuous service, and then active financial and enablement, in the community outreach became must-win priorities for us.
Very, very impressive. I suppose for most people listening in right now, the fact that you didn't actually cut down numbers as a result of this, because a lot of businesses did. So that really is first prize for you. That's absolutely well done. And what are the business prospects now going forward? We know what COVID has done, what it is doing, and how do you see the future for MTN?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was just reading an article the other day, actually, by Dave Ulrich, and I'm sure the HR people will know him, is a thought leader in that space, and he spoke about, just sort of what we're learning from the pandemic, and he spoke about the advancing of digital revolution, redefining work boundaries to include virtual work. There's increasing social citizenship, emphasizing diversity and inclusion, harnessing uncertainty through agility. There's the sort of, the renewing of relationships with family and friends, and many sort of the emotional resilience, the things I spoke about. And I think the new normal post-COVID is going to see a lot of that just becoming a lot more of digital transformation and digital opportunities. And I mean, it's not new, because many companies, including MTN, we were on this path anyway. But I think the pandemic just accelerated this, and we're now firmly in that space. And I think what you're going to see is a lot more of that. But while digital and technology has changed our lives, I think in the last 12 months, I think at the heart of it, we're still human beings. And the real business prospects, in my mind, post-COVID, will lie in the ability for companies to provide solutions that will use digital to enable more humanity and allow us to be human beings again. And I think that's even why you see our EVP talking to that aspect. I also think that well-being, will become a pivotal part of what any business does. Health, safety, and well-being solutions will become unique value propositions for businesses. I mean, even if you look at the global trends now, the number one thing that all companies are talking about, and is their top priority, is the sort of health and well-being of the organization, of their people and their customers. I think these are the things that will probably, come from this.
Okay. And obviously the COVID has brought in a lot of anxiety, and with it, serious mental challenges for employees. Maybe walk us through around some of the initiatives that you have to look after employees around that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think we've got probably a couple of things here. I think some of what's changed for us is I think we look at it as from a workforce, workplace perspective. And I think all of those things have changed. There's new realities that has come from that. And we have to think about that strategically, operationally, and tactically. And I think from a work perspective, the what and the how has become an imperative part of, you know, in the traditional ways of on-site interactive work has changed, and we know that. So we have to reconfigure work from tasks to outcomes, and pivoting to digital tools and enablers, you know, so that we can deal with these big changes and how we adapt to that. I've spoken about the workforce in the context of health, safety, well-being, and just the virtual collaboration, which is a massive shift which we've seen happening. And again, yeah, we're gonna have to help our people cope with the pressures and the fears and the tragedies that the pandemic has brought, including how they deal with this balance of work life, because we're now all working at home, wherever, and all of those things have been meshed up, and we have to make sense of this for our people, you know. And then from a workplace perspective, you know, I mean, I'm talking to you now from my home. And so, you know, my home is now my new office space. So finding innovative ways to adapt to a new home work environment where the challenges that, you know, the challenges are centered around those sort of elements during this period. So I think we're going to have to rethink a lot of those things for our people, you know.
I was going to ask you the question how your business is adopting to this new normal, but I'm going to put it this way and ask you first, if you rated yourself and you said, we've walked this path through COVID, these are the things we have done. Are you satisfied with what you have done? And if you were to rank yourself, how satisfied are you with what you did? What lessons did you pick from what of the journey?
Look, I think there's a lot. You can always do more, and you can always, with hindsight, the things we could have maybe done better or differently. But I think we were early on. We stepped in. We were very clear what was important to us, and we did a lot. You know, I mean, I haven't got into all the details of. We recognized this need to connect, so we launched what we call apart together sessions, where these were virtual sessions where every month, and they weren't about work, they were just connecting people. And it's from the CEO down, we'd have sessions where they would do different things. And we were showing ourselves as human people, as all going through these things together. I mean, in one of the sessions, I did a cook-off with the group CTO, the CTO of MTN South Africa. He's an expat, an Italian guy. And I love cooking, so I mean, the whole organization watched me cook in my kitchen, and him and I had a cook-off where he did pizza, and he was doing some pasta recipe that came from his mother, you know. So and they sort of voted on these things. So it was about showing your humanness and just
absolutely,
you know, just bringing that together. And I think I guess. We're still working on these things. We're still doing a lot for our people. We're trying to think through what more we can do. But I guess if you talk about ranking, late last year, my broadband did a sort of survey amongst the people, I guess, in the country or in our organizations, without us knowing. I don't know how they got hold of these people, but anyway.
Okay.
And we were rated, we got a score of 91%.
Wow.
You know,
Okay.
as how good. People felt we responded. So, I mean, if that's a measure, but it's not, I don't think that's not the important thing. For me, the important thing is, how do our people feel? You know, and we did a health monitor thing where every day we ran a quick thing to check in with our people to see how they were doing. Right. And we took that information, and then that's how we structured responses to deal with how they were where they were and what they needed and things like that. That's why, for example, we came up with a staff fund, because we realized that people were taking strain, not because we came from a perspective, well, we're not cutting jobs or cutting salaries, but obviously everybody working in their communities, in their families, they were taking strain because they were now helping 3, 4, 5, 10 other people that they weren't helping before. So, you know, and even with funerals and all sorts of things like that, there was a lot more that needed. And so those were the ways in which, you know, we responded. And then we, you know, in many ways. So anyway, let me stop.
No, but excellent, excellent. I've just got one more, and this is, I mentioned earlier about the health impacts of COVID, and so when you are promoting employees in this environment, what is your cardinal guide when promoting people into management, where they need to take into account these psychological factors? How have you got a policy around that?
Well, look, I mean, for us, it's very much part of our greater, as I said, it's how we lead, how we manage. And so there's a couple of things. I mean, we see our leaders as playing sort of 4 roles that we've defined. If you're leading people, you know, and I'll just quickly, we're going to run out of time, I guess, but you know, we talk about them being the chief clarity officer, which is that they need to really be giving focus, and in all this uncertainty and everything, let's prioritize the most important things to do and focus on them and focus the team. I'm just summarizing quickly. There's the chief resolver, which is a second role, which is where they really have to be concerned about taking away the barriers, because as we're working from home, there's lots of issues. People are not connecting, walking in the passages, so sometimes they're struggling to get things done. So there's a role that you have to play in that. Then there's the chief empathy officer, and that comes closer to the point that you were making, where the emotional well-being is of great concern to us, and we recognize that, you know, quite early, the entire people experience strategy is vital for people to have this. There's the digital fatigue, there's all of these things that play themselves out. And so we very focused on that. And that's why you've heard me now refer to coming out of this, the human component. We talk about our leaders leading with heart and with really that compassion and that empathy. And that's why we've defined this third role really as the chief empathy officer. And then you guys will like this, because I mean, you I know you're a coach, but the final role is the chief life coach, because through this process,
I love that one.
you know,
Well done.
Well done.
there's a lot of struggle that people are having, and we're saying the leaders have to coach them through this thing from you know, all aspects of things. So that's a way that we see our leaders playing. And so as they move in, we're doing this, but of course we need to support them, you know. So as we move forward, we actually focused on what we call a digital well-being sort of process, where through self-help collaboration, a community app, we're going to enable and support our people better. So we're launching a sort of this digital well-being app shortly that will help them with the tools, because you also have to give people tools. So to date, you know, we've provided some serious work from home guidance for our managers so that they can better manage their teams in these times. We've launched empathy toolkits and a learning series to enable the line management to really help and tend to the emotional well-being of their teams. And then, of course, the normal stuff like the extended virtual helpline and counseling support and things like that that we get through our healthcare providers and medical benefits and things. And I think I must just say one more thing here, that there's an opportunity that's come through here that is really, which we mustn't lose. And it's something I didn't see that would come through, but this whole idea of diversity and inclusion, those learnings for improved sensitivity and inclusive practices, I think it's just come to the fore and it's naturally emerged out of this. And I think that's one of the key things that we should be building on and really putting out there through as we move out of this pandemic.
Wow, as a coach, Brother George, this is music in my ears to
Yeah,
hear
absolutely.
all talking about giving the people tools. I mean, that says to me that they are still responsible for their own daily challenges, but you are providing them with tools so that they can be able to assist themselves. That's powerful. You have also mentioned something that I am glad you brought it back, because you raised it earlier on and you brought it back and you reminded me that, you know, your core markets, Middle East Africa, this is a melting pot of diversity. I mean, we can be very cosmetics about diversity management and inclusion, but this is real stuff. I mean, the colleagues in the Middle East, they start working on Sunday when most of you are still enjoying coffee and hoping the Monday doesn't come. I mean, that should be very challenging from the land business point of view. And then you take Africa. If you demarcate Africa into north, south, east, west, and central, and you are in all those markets, I mean, it must be taking a strain on leaders who have to lead in these diverse markets. And I'm very much interested to find out from you how these things become bigger consideration before you appoint somebody to go and head a branch in one of these diverse regions, North Africa, for example. Tell us a little bit more about your diversity management inclusion program.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of our strategies in terms of our talent development is that we move people around a lot into the different markets, because it's also by experience that you understand. Because as you rightly say, these markets are very different. We have three major, I mean, there's lots of languages that are spoken, as you know, in Africa and so on. But we have three major languages, and it's English, Arabic, and French. So if you come into MTN, you'll hear that language, those languages being spoken all the time, you know. We have people in our business that speak all three languages. And so they're very valuable in that sense of moving them around and so on. We have diversity in all its forms, you know. So I know in South Africa, you know, we have the Employment Equity Act and things like that, which is legislated. And it's not so in many of these markets, but we approach it from a similar vein, where all the reports that I want to see on our people is how are we reflecting the people of that country. So, and in our organization and in the level. So we apply the same sort of thinking, you know, in that way. We drive a very strong focus on gender and that mix. And so we have to, and each country has a different dynamic around what diversity is and the dynamics of that. I mean, Cameroon is like a French-English issue, you know, and each one has a slightly different perspective. So, but what we are saying is that at MTN, each one is valued, your voice is equal, and we create an environment where you can thrive. And now with our new EVP, where you can live an inspired life. So that means we need to create these environments for all these people. And so we have a lot of focus on diversity, training, awareness, and we build it into a lot of those things constantly. Last year, I launched a sort of awareness video of diversity and inclusion using MTN people. You know, I like to use the stories of MTNers because that's more powerful. So we can talk to people who have lived and worked in several of our operations, from the Middle East to the northern parts of Africa, to the east, to the west, all the way to the south. And when you look at a lot of the people that move and get promoted and all of those things, it's the people who are able to look at that. We take culture very important in our company. It's the fundamental building block, and we believe very strongly that is the bedrock of our success and how we can succeed. So, and very much part of that culture are a lot of these elements that I'm talking about. And so, for example, every single CEO is measured on the culture of their country and their operation. And it's cascaded all the way down below that. So, and we've been measuring this for 20 years, you know, and so we have data, we have trends. And now during the pandemic at the end of last year, we did the assessment in October. And as an average across our group, and the score is not important, but it just illustrates a point that I want to make. We scored 81% in terms of engagement levels, but that's an average. If you go to countries, like if we highlight certain countries, I'll just use two as an example, Ghana, Benin, some of the countries on the West African side and elsewhere, the scores are over 90%, as high as 94, 95, 96% of engagement levels. You look at and these are our people telling us, if you look at the diversity inclusion scores, it's 88% as an average in the group. So you must know it's much higher in some of the markets. So we look at these things and we go in and we understand what people are doing. We take the lessons, we share them elsewhere. We work with the countries that are struggling with these things, because of course, you know, it's a dynamic environment and not everybody's the same. So, but we are driving this thing up in a way that we want to be leading in these spaces because we believe in it firstly, and of course it helps our business, you know.
Paul, you are, sorry, Boniwe, just my last question. You are a member of the group EXCO.
Yes, yes.
And as an ex-HR myself, and I'm sure Boniwe will agree, that it's not in every organization that the HR finds its rightful seat at the top level of the organization, in terms of management. I mean, not physically, but I mean in terms of influence, in terms of you making meaningful contribution to the business, not just to people, but to the business. And the way you talk and the way you articulate the business of MTN tells me that when you're sitting there, the colleagues don't just see an HR executive, they see one of them. And how did you get that right?
Well, look, I mean, I think you're absolutely right in you know, saying that that's the role that HR is to play. So there's a couple of things. I think one, and you know, you need to know the business. So you know, and you're sitting there with your functional expertise hat on HR, but most of the conversation is the business. Yes. So you need to be able to understand the business to talk to that. And you need to get into the detail. And what I've done over the years, but in the more recent time, is I'm also shifting the HR way of work. So I introduced a new HR model, business model, about 2 years ago, which is very much a value chain approach. And here the focus is on solving business problems. So, you know, so for example, I'll give you a practical example. One of the big things we're doing, and I think I spoke about it even as an outcome of the pandemic, that, you know, companies are going to have to be much more agile. And with digitization and all of these things, agility is the name of the game, and everybody talks about it. And a lot of companies are training people on, you know, being Scrum Masters and all these things about agile. My approach is we should shift beyond that. So I'm trying to shift the training as an example of what I'm talking about, where if you're going to train people on agile, now normally we would just say, here's a training program for agile, it's 2 days, 3 days, whatever. People go to the program, they get certified, they come back, and well, we hope they're using it. What we did, just to illustrate the point I'm trying to make, is about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, while sitting in Exco and listening to the conversations, I realized that, you know, the consumer guys that look after customer experience had identified several what we call high volume journeys, which is, you know, where customers have to it's like, you know, when you want to get your SIM activated or something, every customer, there's a lot of people that do that. That's the high volume journey. So how do we make those things easier and quicker? And the consumer guys had identified, let's say for the sake of the conversation, 5 high volume journeys that they wanted the countries to do and implement. And that year that they put it in, I think mostly the companies barely made 1 high volume journey, or maybe 2, but they definitely didn't make the 5 in the whole year. So when I looked at this and I discussed it with several people, I brought 100 people from the different countries to South Africa, in Joburg, and we sat them down and we basically trained them in agile approaches for a few days. And then we brought the customer experience people in and we said, take them through these high volume journeys. They must apply to those high volume journeys these agile techniques. And we sent them back to their countries and we gave them 3 months to implement 2 high volume journeys. And then we had daily stand-ups and all sorts of things. That is the agile way. We gave them agile tools to manage the project and all these things. Within 3 months, every single country implemented the 2 high volume journeys. Most of them did more. Some did as many as 5 and 6 high volume journeys in 3 months. Now that obviously then impacted the customer experience, which meant the NPS scores went up, which meant the business experience was better, which meant more money came in, which meant there was greater retention of, you can follow it all the way
The
through.
bottom line, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm saying those are ways. I'm just using that as, there's lots of that, but I'm just saying that's the way HR has to be thinking about what they do, and not about let's do a training program, but looking at it from that perspective. And I think that's part of a long answer, Sam, to your question, which is you have to play a role that solves the problems of the business.
You need
Then
to bring value to
they'll pull you in, they'll come after you, they'll want you there, they'll listen to you, and then you have an equal voice. That's it.
Beautiful.
So I think that's quite a beautiful answer, Paul, because I think it's critical for people to understand that human resources role or profession, it's not that one that is actually transactional, but it is a one that is actually has to add value and meaning to the business, and business acumen becomes quite important. Gone are the days whereby people will only talk about processes and policies and trainings and all of those things, but it is about how you actually utilize that in addition to the business acumen to actually make sure that as a human resources professional, you actually earn your seat at the table and you actually bring your valuable input, and then how do we actually align those business critical strategies and objectives in terms of how we actually bring the people element in it, So you can't solve for the people element if you don't understand the business element. Is that how do you as an HR professional get to match the two? And I think thank you so much for that answer. And I think it's really what we wanted to hear from you today. So in closing, what would be your advice to the HR executives out there, to the leaders and to the HR professionals in terms of, how do we move forward as a people and as individuals, and how do we make contributions to the world? So what would be your advice to South African professionals and to the world at large to say, what, this is what we need to do going forward, given the world and the norm that we live in now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always careful not to be giving advice because, it's
let's just say closing remarks. It's fine.
Yeah.
Let's stick to closing remarks.
Let's have your closing remarks.
I don't have the answers. But I guess, the first thing I think you got to have a passion for what you're doing. You got to believe in that, and you've got to be curious about it, because the world is changing, and we've seen it now with the pandemic, but and it's not going to stop, and nothing is staying the same. So you can't stand still. And the point I've always said, and I see the difference every day in the people that I come into contact with, the ones who are curious and who are striving to to stay relevant and want to make a difference are the ones who are in fact doing that. So what I would say is you've got to have passion and be curious and believe in what you're doing. You've got to be, this is the purpose thing. It's got to be greater than you. And I mean, people always say to me, why are you still at MTN? You know, it's like they sort of with a question imply, well, did you not get some other opportunities and you got stuck there? And I always say to them, it's not at all the case. I'm here because I really believe in what we're doing. No year has been the same for me. And, you know, while we, you know, in pure business terms, we're selling airtime or that sort of thing, I don't see it like that. I see us improving the quality and lives of people. We have a company belief system that says everybody deserves the benefit of a modern connected life. And I see it in reality every single day. You know, I've been traveling into these countries for 20, 30 years now. And I see the difference we make. And that inspires me and that keeps me going. So that level of inspiration, curiosity, I think is a key thing. That will also stop you from being reactive to the changes that you see around you. You're going to have to move beyond point solutions and responsive, just responding to this issue. You have to see the big picture and you have to design things to have impact at the longer term, but starting now in the small steps. And I think it's time to reinvent. And I mean, that's why we've done the value proposition for our people now, because it's relevant for now. It's important for us to do it now. And we need to connect our people to something bigger and something broader, you know? So I think, you know, there's when we went into this, this pandemic, you know, there's that quote by John F. Kennedy where he talks about when written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of sort of two characters. The one represents danger and the other one is opportunity. And I think you got to see both those things are always there, but how do you grab the opportunity and make something of it? And I think that, I mean, I know it's very broad advice. It's not specific things like, you know, go do this, go do that. But I think it starts there. Recognize ourselves as we human, which comes to the point which I spoke about, the diversity and inclusion thing picks up, because when we recognize that actually we're different, but we're the same. And when we recognize that connectedness in each other, we can, that the respect comes, all of the things that we talk about in terms of the values that make us human and make us thrive and make us whole. That's what we see. And that's my issue. I'm saying, let's be there. Let's recognize that. Let's be curious and let's want to make a difference in the lives of others. And then the rest comes, you know.
Wow. Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
That is so profound.
Yeah.
Sam?
Wow. Paul, man, this is wonderful. We could talk forever, but this was really mouthful. I'm sure the listeners and the fellow professionals out there appreciate the input that you have shared with them. That was Paul Norman, the MTN Group Chief Human Resources Officer. And I've learned that there are some very interesting specialists within your group that assist the staff. And I like the Chief Life Coach. It's the Chief Life Coach. That for me is my take home. And it's not just because I'm a coach, because I really believe that there is a need for that. That was our Human Resources Development and Management 101 conversation, the program that we do in partnership with the Institute of People Management, IPM South Africa, on a monthly basis. It happens on the first Wednesday of every month. And Paul, you have been the inaugural guest for us, and we are honored for that. Thank you, my colleagues, George Mutenda Zamera, the CEO and executive coach at Vula Unlock Consulting, and our sister Boniwe Danster, an HR specialist. She tells me that she wanted to become a PR specialist, but I don't know what happened. She landed in HR and she's loving it. And she is here as a member of the IPM and representing the members of the organization and many other HR professionals and many other structures, by the way. Thank you very much, Paul. All the best. Greetings to the MTNs. They are doing a great work, and I'm sure they'll continue inspiring us even more. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
The last word.
Thank you very much, Paul. We appreciate it. And I know your share price is 76 or something right now. I think it should go up from what you've told me.
So we are hoping as well, George.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul, and thank you for joining us today, and hope to come across each other in future.
Thanks, Boniwe.
Goodbye and take care and be safe, colleagues.